Hello. Yeah, great. Everyone is awake here? Good morning. Cool. Okay, so this is advanced monitoring talk for Postgres. So if you are not in the right talk, there are other talks going on as well. So because sometimes when you are coming early, you might choose the wrong talk. I have done in the past, so just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware. My name is Denish Patel. I'll be talking about some monitoring stuff. So let's do some quick poll. How many of you are using monitoring? Are you monitoring Postgres? Rest of them are not monitoring Postgres because they are not using Postgres. Maybe MongoDB. Let's see. We'll figure it out by end of this talk. Okay, so let me talk about myself. I'm a data guy. I love data. So I work as Medallia as a senior database architect. We have a very big Postgres installation, 150 clusters, more than like ranging from 1 terabyte to 4.5 terabyte of database sizes. So it's pretty large Postgres installation. Before that, I used to work for a small startup in Las Vegas. With me, I was a principal database architect, and I ran Postgres on RDS for about 5-6 months. Before that, I was a lead database architect at OmniTI. That's one of our sponsors. I worked there for about 8 years. I do work on RDBMS and NoSQL. So if you have any question related to anything, I'll be happy to discuss, even though I can't answer all the questions, but I would like to learn. You can contact me. I am on Twitter, and I sometimes blogs. And I do run Postgres Slack channel. If you are not on Postgres Slack channel, I think you are slacking. So make sure you are on Postgres Slack channel, postgres-slack.herokuapp.com. There are about 550 members talking about Postgres 24/7. Okay, that's all about me. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So I think we're going to talk about monitoring solutions. There are hundreds of monitoring tools available in the market right now. So there's a first question, like when I joined Medallia, like they were looking at the monitoring tools, like which one to use. So we went through some of the exercises. So I am going to talk about what to look when you are trying to monitor your Postgres database or anything else. I'm going to compare some of the selected open source and commercial solutions that I have used so far. Then we will talk about more interesting stuff, like even though whatever tool you are using, but make sure you are collecting the information you want to monitor. So we're going to talk about a lot about what kind of metrics I do collect. Everybody might collect different, so we might be able to discuss, like it will be exchange that I will learn some more stuff to monitor from you guys. Which metrics to define, like some of the metrics you would like to get alert on, even though you are monitoring. If you are not getting alert on those metrics, it might work to put alerts on those metrics. Some thresholds, but it depends on your environment. How to keep up with the monitoring changes, like because the software is always evolving, like adding more things. So make sure that you keep up with the monitoring tools. Tools or Postgres changes related to monitoring. And how to react on, like when you get alert at 3 a.m., like how to react, what are the things you can do beforehand to react at 3 a.m. So whenever you set up a threshold, make sure that you set up a threshold based on assumption that you're going to get alert at 3 a.m. So that's the mentality I would like to set on here. And open discussion, like I'm here to learn, like as everybody else. So we can talk about, like as I said, we have about 50 people. Everybody has at least a couple of monitoring tools I've used. So if you can give me the names, I think I will know all hundreds of monitoring tools in the market right there. So, but I'm going to talk about maybe 5-10 monitoring tools here. So first we will talk about selection criteria. What are the things you should be looking into when you are choosing the monitoring tool? So blend of system monitoring with Postgres support. Like you don't want, like I haven't seen any installation that only runs Postgres and nothing else, right? You always run web applications and backend servers and other things. So you would like to make sure that your monitoring tool, whatever you are choosing, does include everything. Like, so I am big fan of centralized monitoring. Like even though we have like 3 monitoring tools, like we are trying to combine all together into one now, because like when you have a lot of different monitoring tools, I think you are getting alerts, and when you click you go to some other URL. So that's the mess when you are dealing with a problem middle of the night. The other thing you would like to think about hosted versus on-premise. There are a lot of hosted monitoring solutions available, and some of them are on-premise. So you can install yourself and manage, keep your data. So first thing, you need to make sure the security concerns of your client. So is your client can allow you to send your monitoring data over to the hosted client's data center? Then that's the easiest way to set up monitoring, and you don't have to worry about monitoring infrastructure, like managing monitoring infrastructure. Alerting and dashboard graphs capability. Does your solution provide alerting as well, like, or you need to set up some different thing for alerting and some different thing for dashboard? Those kind of things are very important when you are choosing the solution. Easy to installation configuration. Some monitoring solutions are there, but they are not easy to install, to understand. Make sure you understand the architecture. So whenever you go ask for a monitoring solution, if you are going for some commercial one, ask for architecture diagram, so you can understand what are the moving parts managing that monitoring solution. Of course, it should support Postgres. Make sure that it does allow you to work with pgstat statements. How many of you don't know anything about pgstat statements? Yes, so I will save 2 minutes in my talk, so I don't have to talk about pgstat statements. And resource monitoring, there are 4 kind of resources, right? Like CPU, RAM, disk, network. If it can allow to monitor those kind of things, I think because Postgres is blended with the OS, so make sure that you are monitoring those resources with Postgres. And PG bouncer support, like can you monitor PG bouncer if you are using, we are not using right now, but we are looking into it. So make sure you keep that thing in your mind when you are choosing the solution. So some of the monitoring solution I am going to discuss here very briefly about them is open source. These are the solutions I have used so far, like Sensu, Zabbix, Xenos with limited capability. If you need a higher version, you need to buy it. Nagios. Nagios is the oldest one. I think most of the people have used it. But you can search on stop using Nagios so it can die peacefully. So that's a really nice blog post. So if you are using Nagios, I think you should read that blog post and see if you can allow Nagios to die. The other SaaS offering I have worked so far, like some of them are not listed here, but Wavefront, Circonus, Vivid Cortex is only like mostly database monitoring. OK Meter is the one I recently reviewed. New Relic, I have used Datadog, but I haven't mentioned here because I have used Datadog only with RDS. So the solution I have used are with bare metal and VMs and all other stuff. So hosted on or on premise. Am I missing anything in the list? Yes, I am missing about 906. Yeah. Okay. So open source monitoring solution. So I did like make little tabular format, like all these solutions I talked about, they do support Postgres. If we talk about configuration, like if you are not familiar with check-_Postgres, that's the mostly Postgres. If you are in Postgres users, most of the people have used check Postgres plugin or script for monitoring Postgres. Sensu is easy to set up with the Postgres once Sensu is set up already for other infrastructure. But the catch is it doesn't provide a graphic. So you need to add another graphite or other things for the dashboard capability. Zabbix, it does provide Postgres plugin, but you need to add, like, you need to look into what kind of metrics the plugin is provide, because it might be missing some of them, and that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the talk. Some of the very common metrics you should be looking into those plugins. Genos Easy plugins, Nagios, it's using check Postgres as well, but it's very difficult to manage and modify. So from the recommendation confidence level, I put Sensu as the high confidence. If you are looking for something in-house, on-premise, and monitoring Postgres and other infrastructure, I would choose Sensu over all other three. That's my recommendation. You don't have to follow it, but and other things are medium and low. Let's talk about SaaS offering. Okay, so I've been using CollectD and Wavefront lately since like 6 months now. It's been good. Does Postgres support. Circonus I have used for a long time. It does has a default check, so you don't have to even write checks. Some of the checks you can just click, and there are some checks. Vivid Cortex is the another one that I've used. It's pretty interesting monitoring solution, but it's a little expensive. OK Meter, that's I recently reviewed. It's a one-click installation. So once you install OK Meter, it's everything is there. Like you don't have to do anything. Like similar to Vivid Cortex and OK Meter into same category. New Relic, I got chance to work on New Relic as well, but I looked into number of plugins available. Like there are some used from EDB and other companies, but they are missing. I think I got one from MeetMe, but they are missing some metrics, so we need to add a metrics. It's a long process. So from the confidence level, I put New Relic as the lowest versus all other fours. I would recommend, like, if you, I don't have any choice out of 4, but you can use any of them depending on your price or your budget, sorry. Okay, so other things you want to look, because SaaS offerings are, you might want to look into some other things that's more advanced, like does your solution provide capacity planning? Because it's very important to see, like, after 6 months, if my database is growing this size, how much disk space I will need, what will be the connection settings, those kind of things. Real-time analytics, that's the another thing you might want to check, like does it provide a query, because the monitoring I use, like you can query the metric right on the solution, like on the graphs or dashboard. So real-time analytics is very important. Anomaly detection, it's a new one. Vivid Cortex has been working on this. It's not complete yet, but like if I have most of our server has about 10 terabyte disk space, like that's the default. So if I get page at 85%, I still have a lot of space available. I don't want to get page at 85%. Instead of that, I would like to see anomaly if there is something that if it is it's growing really fast, like it's grow in 1 hour from 100 gig to 300 gig, then I would like to check why the database grew 200 gig like in 1 hour. So those kind of things should fall under anomaly detection. Data retention, like if you are looking at a SaaS offering, make sure that you understand how much, because some product allow you to retain the data for 3 months, some for 1 year, but the sweet spot is like about 3 to 5 years, because you want to check like what happened during the last November season, that I would be very careful about going into this holiday season. Support reviews, make sure that you talk to the existing users using the tool. Pricing is of course important. So I've just, like, from the example perspective, the Wavefront is the one I'm using right now. So why I chose, like, it has a nice dashboard alerting functionality, very scalable solution. Like once I set up for one server, I could able to set up for about 150 clusters very easily. any existing matrix collection tools you are using, it can work with it. Like I use CollectD, real-time analytics capability, and complete monitoring solution. It does allow alerting and dashboards. And Anoka Meter, I chose another one from the list. Like I did install into my Vagrant instance, and like it was fairly easy to like install it. Once you install it, everything is there. Like it's, you don't have to like, you can create your own monitoring, but it's already there. So it does does monitoring through pgstat statements, built-in post pg bouncer monitoring. So if you are using pg bouncer, you can just install the agent for OK Meter, and it will, monitoring will be there, and built-in resource monitoring and alerting capability. So that's all about, and these are some stats I liked about like PG Bouncer, that right now we are evaluating PG Bouncer to use or not, but once I will install PG Bouncer, I will definitely make sure that I do set up this kind of monitoring in Wavefront. So like not a single monitoring is complete for, so I think you need to look into the market what kind of other monitorings are using, and you can implement the same monitoring into your tools. You don't have to buy the new monitoring tool to just get those metrics, right? You can implement by yourself. So, and that's what the another learning I would like to take your home. Like if you are using Datadog, look at the New Relic plugin and see what kind of metrics it is using and what you are monitoring, and compare and make sure that you add those monitoring in your monitoring solution. Okay, so when I chose, like as I said, we have 150 DB cluster across the globe. We look at the easy installation standardization, make sure that we don't want to use Zabbix for this thing, Wavefront for other things. So centralized solution, real-time analytics, and we are moving into Docker, Aurora Mesos infrastructure. So we wanted to make sure that this monitoring tool will be scalable with the Docker instances, because we will have maybe 2,000 to 3,000 Docker Postgres instances going on maybe early next year. So we would like to make sure that monitoring, whatever we chose, it will be scalable. So let's talk about good things now. Like this is all about what to choose. Now let's dig into what should we monitoring now, like what things I'm monitoring. I might be missing a lot of them, but I'm going to talk about what's my setup and how I'm monitoring. So first of all, you would like to set up the role, because you don't want to monitor your database using the same role that you are using for application. In my example, I am using CollectD, using the schema CollectD. I don't set, make sure that you are not using as a super role. Like don't give the super user permission to the monitoring role with the limited permission. So I'm going to talk about how you can do that because Postgres doesn't allow some of the queries unless you are a super user. So we're going to talk about that. So there are two things from this slide. Make sure you have a separate role and no super user. Okay, so I'm using CollectD plugin. So CollectD plugin it's open source. You can get from the GitHub. It does provide some basic monitoring queries already. On top of that, I created my own custom monitoring queries. So as I said earlier, like you don't have to switch your tool to add more monitoring. You just add more monitoring into same chute you are using it. Just make sure that what you want to concentrate on monitoring. So instead of concentrating on the tool you are using. Backends, that's the simplest monitoring query. It's doing select count star from pgstat activity. But as I said earlier, the CollectD user is not a super user. So what I have to do is I had to create a separate pgstat activity function that will wrap in, and it will call the pg catalog pgstat activity, and make that function security definer. So, and then grant this function to collect D, right? So, collect D is not super user, still it can able to see all the activities go, all the output from pgstat activity. Otherwise, if you don't do this and collect D is not super user, it will say in the pgstat activity is insufficient permission. So, to get around that, you can create a security definer function and you can get away with the no super user. So, and my slides will be available, so you don't have to like remember this. So, you can just refer back later. Transaction is another thing. You want to know like how many transactions per second your database is doing. Like that's a common question from the business people, like, hey, we have like a 4 terabyte database, like how many transactions per second is doing now, and are we ready for next season or not? So, you would like to monitor transactions like commits and rollbacks. I have seen in the past, we have seen a lot of rollbacks going on in the application, and we could able to pinpoint that application was like disconnecting and not like rolling back some of the transactions. So, you can actually figure it out some problems in the application, it's not committing correct way by looking at the rollbacks. Queries. So, you want to see like how many inserts, updates, deletes, hot updates are happening. So, you can use pgstat users tables and you can find out, and it will be per database. So, collect the plugin allow you to connect per database. So, it will tell you like if you suddenly see like a lot of inserts are happening and see why it's happening, then you can find out like it was like a big CSV loading happening at the same time that we are seeing a lot of spike in inserts. So, you can able to understand your database better, and you can answer those questions instead of like looking at the logs, and sometimes you don't have enough logs to look at it and you don't have time to look at it. So, graph is the better way to look at it, the information in the dashboard itself. Table stats. Yeah, it's a states, but stats. There is a typo, I think, in the collective plugin, but that's fine. pgstat users table. That's another. We want to see like it's a live tuple versus dead tuple. We want to see we are not having a lot of dead tuples around. So, you want to monitor those things and correlate, read about things in the Postgres SQL.org to make sure you understand these things, right? Like you have to understand, even though you are monitoring, if you don't know what you are monitoring, then it's useless. Query plans. It does tell you like sequential scan, index scan. So, there is a pgstat users table, same table, but we are collecting that matrix separately. It will tell you like suddenly how many sequential, the query has started doing sequential scan. So, it will be spiking a lot. So, you want to make sure that your queries are using the indexes, and if you are using sequential scan, you would like to know why they are using sequential scan. So, this graph will tell you, this metric will tell you like it started using sequential scan since 9 a.m. this morning. Why? What? We just pushed new thing, or there is new query added. We could able to find out couple of bad queries using this check, like in last like 2 to 3 months, that like we sent out, we pushed the new change and the query was using a sequential scan instead of index scan, and it was slowing down everything. So, this thing is very important. Okay, disk IO. So, you can still like I used to be working as Oracle DBA like about 8-9 years ago, and I was big fan of like having all the statistics. So, I think Postgres does allow you to get the IO related statistics inside the database. How Postgres learn, like how Postgres experience the IO from inside. So, the index blocks read, block hits, miss, toast table, like how many blocks are hit and not hitting, read, those kind of things are very important. So, there is a stat IO users table that you can query and find out I can't explain everything here, but like you can go search, Google is my friend, search on pgstat.io users underscore tables, you'll find out on Postgres SQL.org. Postgres is very good at documentation. I am not lying, it is. Are you guys awake? Okay, I'm just making sure. Sometimes I talk alone and like, then I go. Okay, disk usage or DB size. The name is disk usage, but it's actually a DB size check in the collective plugin. So you are just checking the size of the database. You want to make sure that, like, that's also a business. People always ask, like, what's the size of our database? Can you tell me? Like, you don't have to query right there. Like, you can just send this beautiful graph, like, okay, this is the size, and make sure that you are showing the size for last 2 years. So your business people will be happy, like we are growing, right? So yeah, it's very important you are collecting the size of the database. Even though it's a trivial thing, but it makes business people happy. Okay, so now the rest of the checks we are going to talk are the checks are not exist in collect-D, but they are created by us or me. They are custom checks. So the connection check, so as we talked earlier, the backends was just giving you number of connections, but it wasn't giving, are this connection idle in transaction, or active. So I'm still using that collect.d.pgstat activity. As you can see, it's the same view that we created on top of pgcatalog pgstat activity. So I'm also getting with the union and getting the waiting connection, because you want to know how many connections are waiting as well. Not only how many connection I have, but the state of each connection as well. So that will give you the full picture of the connection. So if somebody tells you like, okay, database is slow, you can go directly into this graph and see like how many connections are active, idle, waiting, idle in transaction. Idle in transaction is the big issue. Like we have to track down that a lot of connections were just sitting in idle in transaction for days, and that could cause Postgres wild. Like the auto vacuum and other things get, the performance slows down when you have long running idle in transactions in the database. So this is like a simple graph. I just put it just for fun and profit, because there was a lot of text in the previous slide. So just wanted to show some graphs like connections graphs. It will look like this. Like you can, it doesn't tell you anything out of this slide, but you can see some graphs out of this matrix, and it will tell you if there's a spike or not. And the top one is the wavefront, the bottom one is the Anoka Meter graph. So as you can see, the richness, the wavefront rich, it looks like very rich API, versus Anoka Meter is like so, but I think it can give you them some details. Slow queries. So there is another thing I learned from, I think, Zabbix, that Zabbix has a default in the plugin itself. It has slow queries alerting. So what it does is it queries the pgstat activity, that stat is active, and the query is running more than 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes, and make sure that the query is in between insert, update, delete, or select. It ignores a vacuum and any other queries. So in case your select is running, like for the OLTP system, it's running more than 5 minutes, and there are more than like 5 queries running more than 5 minutes, it might be some issues going on, like that some queries are really slow, and we could track down number of slow queries from alerting on this metric, but by looking at whenever something, and all the time we never got a false positive out of this query. Like whenever we get alert on this, database is slow. So we could able to pinpoint the issue and fixed it. So this is something I learned from Zabbix. Transaction wraparound. Everybody knows what transaction wraparound is? Yes. If you are not, then read about it. So make sure that you are monitoring on that. So you can see the age of date frozen XID from the database simple query, but it can save you a lot of pain when it actually happens. Like it's after 2 billions of transaction, Postgres start doing all the vacuuming and auto vacuuming. So make sure that you are monitoring it and alerting it on the same thing. It's very cheap metrics to get it. But very important to collect, because all the installation I have seen in the past, most of the time this matrix has been missing from the monitoring, because people don't know about this problem. And you might have seen, like, probably Chef and other people talked in the blog post about this, like they found out after they came into this problem, and then they are blaming Postgres. But if you don't know transaction wraparound, then it's a problem, and you should be monitoring on this. Locks is another thing. So you want to find out the locks, how many locks are waiting state as well. Number of locks, like Postgres always doing locking, so it's not a big deal, or it's not a cool metrics to watch on, but you want to watch on the waiting locks. So make sure that you are monitoring the waiting locks and find out from the logs to make sure that why. So there is a logging parameter in Postgres and the postgres.com that you can turn on log lock wait something on, so it will log into logs and you can figure it out which process was waiting on what, and make sure you fix the application and correct the locking sequence. So this is the nice graph. As you can see, the blue is number of locks. Like as you can see in the, I don't think so you can see, but I can see. It's about 5,000 locks, number of locks, but I don't care if there are 10,000 even there, but in the bottom line, it's like if the waiting locks, then I do care about it. So it's nothing. So the bottom one is the Anoka Meter. Okay, the other thing is WAL files. I think I learned this metric to collect because we had some issue with the WAL files and it wasn't archiving because the NetApp, we forgot to mount the NetApp, or it didn't mount it correctly. So we added this check to find out because Postgres does have a count, like how many archived and how many failed. So you can do pgstat underscore archiver view and monitor on that and see if you see spike into failed, and you might have some problem with the archiving. So you can fix ahead of time rather than afterwards like me. Scans. So it's like sum of index scan versus, this is simple different check I did just for just graphing just sequential scan versus index scan. So I can see directly, like, is it normally it was always happening index scan, but now it's doing sequential scan. Another check I add is called sequential underscore scans out of another pain point we were missing. So let me explain what this does. So we are collecting, there is a collectd.get sequence scan on large tables. It's a materialized view I created to find out. We have a very large table, like up to 1 terabyte of tables. Like if start doing sequential scan, you can understand like the website will be down. So we wanted to make sure if any query is happening, and in last 30 minutes or so, or 4 hours, we could able to get alert if the sequential scan spike very fast. So for that, we created a sequential scan on large tables, materialized view on the master database. So it will get the statistics of pgstat all tables with, if the relation size is larger than, I think, 1 gigabyte, and this is the view, it will collect this thing. And after that, I will be, yes? How often do you refresh that? That's the next slide. I knew that you're going to ask me. Okay, so this is the function that I am calling from the monitoring. So this function will called every 5 minutes, but the materialize will be refreshed every 4 hours. So in this function, it will check. We are checking the refresh date if it is older than 4 hours, and because we use this collect the metrics for all, right, for the master and slave. So we want to make sure that we don't run the refresh materialized view on the slave database. So we are checking if the recovery PG is in recovery is false, then refresh it, and then I'm getting the output I wanted to get using the array, because you can have more than one tables. So I'm just combining into array and displaying. So we are alerting on this one now, because this helped us to figure it out if the large table is getting sequential scan. And these slides will be available, so you don't have to remember this, you can just copy paste. And I think my collect the extension is also available in GitHub. So average query time is another thing that I added for it. It relies on the pgstat statements. So I'm just doing some total time divided by some calls. It's the average query time. So pgstat statements does allow you to get what's the average query time in your cluster. So I just recreated that function security definer to get around that super role problem, and it's a simple query, but this is the like basic things I added from pgstat activities, but I have some future plans to add more statistics out of pgstat statements that I think I'm going to talk in the next slide. So this is like the graph, it's showing the average. So suddenly if the average query runtime increases, I will check into database and see if there's a problem going on. The OK meter does provide the similar metrics. So OK meter has some more metrics out of pgstat statement that I don't have in Wavefront that I am going to. So the first one is CPU usage by queries. So you can actually find out which queries are using a higher CPU usage. That's very important metrics, because when there is a spike in CPU usage, mostly it's a sequential scan related. Then in the bottom graph, it's queries. So you can tell how many top queries, like how many queries calls per second, like number of queries. So you don't have to go to logs, like right there in the monitoring, you can actually check it out. So I'm going to implement those. Those are the things like, I will repeat it again, like if you know something good about some other monitoring tool, try to implement in your monitoring tool solution, so it will help you to monitor better. There is another disk IO usage by query. You can actually figure it out from pgstat activity that which queries are using more disk IOs. That's very important to know as well. And the other thing, like when you are having queries like when you have limited network and you want to, the bottom graph is showing like how many rows are returned by queries. That's also very important, because if some programmer is just doing select star from the largest table, you don't want to like get all the data all together, and you just want to limit by where clause. So by graphing this stuff, you can actually optimize your application queries. And that's my to-do list, those 4 graphs. Checkpoints. So you want to figure it out, like whenever checkpoint happens, the system slows down because it has to put buffer into the disk. So you want to just get the background writer statistics. There is a pgstat background writer view that will allow you to collect the statistics. So it will checkpoint timed and requested statistics. Slave lag. It's like if your secondary database is lagging behind, you want to get monitoring on that and get alert. This is the lazy way of doing it. Like this is like, it's like I'm just doing PG last X act relay timestamp. There is a view that you can query and figure out when the last time this this database applied the transaction. But if you have very low volume database, then this might not work. Then you need to look into some other things. And there are a lot of documentation available. Like if you, one of my ex-colleague did a blog post on this, like how to monitor slave lag correct way. So you can figure it out. But this is like, because all our databases are doing transaction every minute, at least one in a minute. So it's not a problem for us. If your database is not doing transaction in like 5 minutes, then I think this will not work for you. Okay, so that's all I talked about monitoring, collections. Did I miss anything? What else I am not collecting? What's that? Stamps? Yes, that's true. Okay, I will start collecting stamps from now on. Okay, so let's talk about alerting. So once you are monitoring, make sure you have alerting in place as well. It's a common thing. Uptime, you want to make sure database or whatever it's uptime. Waiting connection, as I said earlier, this was the new check we added. Like if something is waiting, if number of connections are waiting are more than 5 connections, then we get alert on, like they get pager duty alert. Slow queries, if number of more than 5 queries are slow in the pgstat activity more than 5 minutes, then we get alert. Sequential scan on large tables. It's a transaction wraparound. If, as I said earlier, if it is like approaching to 2 billion, we get alert and we find out which table did not get vacuum and we start vacuuming those tables. Instead of we wait for auto vacuum to kick off and make our database unusable. Disk space uses, right now it's 85%, but I think I'm waiting on anomaly detection to come in and help me, so I don't have to figure it out like fit like 85, but instead of that I would like to get more realistic alerting on disk space usage or any other metrics. Slave lag, if more than 5 minutes, we have a streaming replication with a valve shipping, so it's a hybrid setup. So if in case slave lag is more than 5 minutes, it gets alerted, gets to the pager duty alert. So those are the alerts we have. Important alerts we have. We have some other alerts, but that's only for this application specific. The other thing is, like, even though your monitoring is done today, it's always evolving. Like every year, make sure that you review your monitoring maybe twice in a year at least, to make sure that you, as I said earlier, like some other tools will come in and they will be monitoring. Like before couple of years ago, pgstat activity wasn't there, so it was added. So now you can have more monitoring in place. So make sure that you are looking out monitoring. As backups and recovery is a different topic, monitoring is also a separate topic, and you have some time allocated every year for at least 2 times in a year to review those changes. So some of the way you can keep up with this changes, always design with failover in mind, like, because monitoring is not static. Like once you are master and this is the failover database, once you failover, you need to make sure that your monitoring is applied to the new master database server. Otherwise, it's useless, right? Like, because your system will fail for sure. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe after 1 year, but it will fail. So make sure when you are designing your monitoring, keep failover in mind. Keep eyes on new features of my latest DB or OS version, like, because Postgres is very blended with OS. So if there's a new OS came out, and keep eye on the new features for those OS, and if you can get more better detail about the IO or CPU or network from the new tools. From the Postgres perspective, the new feature Postgres 9.5, if there are some enhancements are coming up as a monitoring, like there is a new thing coming up is commit timestamp tracking. So now you can actually monitor on the select star from PG last committed transaction. So you would like to monitor on that. Cluster name, like in 9.5, now you can add, like if you are using multiple cluster on the same server, you can actually name it. So I think I have example. Okay, so grab check pointer. So as you can see in this PS grab check pointer, that reports DB is a different cluster, personal management. So you can get monitoring accordingly. If you are monitoring on there are some monitorings you will be doing at the top or PS or VMstat or IOstat. So mostly the process level monitoring you can actually now correlate with the cluster name. So those are the changes, like a bunch of changes coming in Postgres 9.6. So you keep looking into those monitoring changes, like the pgstat activity will be improved and give. Right now it's just waiting, like you can see like the pgstat activity, the connection is waiting, but right now you don't know what it is waiting for. But in 9.6, the Postgres is adding more details about what resources it is waiting on. So you can even better understand more details and graph on it. Deploy monitoring through config management tools. I think that's better, because when you have more clusters and database system, you don't want to, because that's a tedious job, right? You don't want to like change that thing like pgstat activity. I think pgstat activity view was changed in 9.2 or 9.3. You need to modify that everywhere. So instead of that, you can do through config management tool like Puppet or Chef or Ansible. Incidents management, I have 3 minutes. How to be ready to handle 3 AM call. I use PagerDuty. That's very easy. Like you can set a calendar in it and you get notification. Document each, make sure you document the metrics, because you don't want to go do Google wide, because there are so many metrics going on. You want to document each and every metrics, why you are collecting and what's how you can fix that thing. For example, if the transaction wraparound alerts at 3 AM in the morning, you don't want to go look into postgres.org and find out what is transaction wraparound. I don't know. So instead of that, you do documentation and how to solve, make sure you have procedure in place. Alert resolution, clear SLAs, because sometimes you don't make decisions at 3 AM. You have to make that decision earlier, like what if uptime is alerting, should I fail over or should I wait for server to come back up? So those kind of decision you document into with a clear SLAs. Escalation policy, make sure that if the server doesn't come out, like it's not your fault, it's a DC's fault. So you need to contact another team to make sure that power button that server. Scenarios, like you need to learn from scenario, like find out what kind of scenario could happen, wait for server to bring back up, failover, review alerts before going on call, like before you, every week we do weekly rotation. So every Monday we rotate. So Monday morning I usually go check what did get alerted last week, what will be expecting in the on-call. On-call notification, make sure you have set up for notification in your phone or a pager. Yeah, think for the worst and document. Like always think about Rust, like system is not perfect, so keep in mind that your system is gonna fail. What if you are like in the movie theater? Normally when I on call, I always go for movie. It's pretty nice, right? So whenever I write documentation, I make sure that I am at the movie or beach, and somebody can follow the instruction on the phone. And why? Like sometimes you can't jump on the server. You have a MiFi with you, but you can't able to connect when you are at the beach. So those kind of things. So that's the incidents management. And document, yeah. Once you are documenting, keep up to date, because documentation is the thing. Anything else? We have 32 seconds for open discussion. But you can keep in touch with me. I'm pretty active at these channels over Twitter. And thank you guys for coming here and attending my talk and conference committee. I think I'm open for question. Any question? We have 5 seconds. This is a new thing, right? Timer.
I've got a question. I know there are hundreds of tools out there, you said. Have you ever used the, Postgres Enterprise Monitoring, PEM?
No, I haven't.
What's that? It is, because in our legacy Oracle environments, we use OEM.
Yep.
And is it similar?
Yeah, it's similar to OEM.
You can customize it, that's good.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It's an enterprise DB product, so you can get more details. They are our sponsor too. Right there. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, exactly 50. Thank you.